You ever notice how common sense used to be something everybody was supposed to have? It was like oxygen, free, everywhere, and you didn't have to pay a government fee to breathe it. But somewhere along the way, the people in charge decided, hey, common sense is dangerous. We better label it a threat. And just like that, boom, it's banned for national security. That's right. In today's world, using common sense is basically an act of rebellion. You think for yourself. You question something? You notice that the people running the country can't organize a sandwich, much less a society. Congratulations, you're now on some watch list. Because let's be honest, common sense is the biggest enemy of any government that runs on confusion, fear, and paperwork. If citizens start thinking clearly, these clowns might actually have to do their jobs. And we can't have that, can we? Just look around. Every sign, every rule, every policy. It's designed to replace common sense. They don't drink bleach. They do not iron clothes while wearing them. Their contents may be hot. This is what you get when the country treats adults like confused hamsters. And the government, oh, they love it. Because a population with no common sense is a population that won't question anything. They'll believe whatever slogan you put on a billboard. You can tell them, we're protecting your freedom by taking away your freedom. And they'll say, thank you, sir. Can I have another? Common sense says, if people in power keep screwing things up, maybe they're the problem. National security says, shh, don't say that, it's classified. Common sense says, if the system is broken, fix the system. National security says, no, let's fix the people who notice the system is broken. And my favorite, common sense says 2 + 2 is 4. Government says, well, that depends on the fiscal quarter. So here we are, living in a country where thinking clearly makes you suspicious, speaking honestly makes you dangerous, and asking questions makes you a criminal mastermind. Common sense didn't disappear. It was outlawed. Because nothing threatens the powerful more than a citizen who can see through the nonsense. Common sense being viewed as a threat isn't some accident. It's practically a government tradition at this point. The people in charge have always had a complicated relationship with citizens who actually think. They prefer citizens who react, citizens who follow, citizens who clap on command like trained seals waiting for a fish. But someone who stops and says, hold on a minute, that doesn't make any sense, that person becomes dangerous. Not because they're violent, not because they're rebellious, but because they can see the strings being pulled. Once you notice the strings, you stop dancing along with the puppet show. That scares the people who run the puppet show more than anything else. Common sense is the natural enemy of confusion, and confusion is the greatest tool ever invented by governments everywhere. Confuse people and you can control them. Keep them guessing, keep them fearful, keep them distracted, and you can get away with almost anything. But if people start to think clearly, logically, plainly, simply, that whole system begins to fall apart. You can't distract someone who's paying attention. You can't manipulate someone who's thinking. You can't control someone who pauses and says, wait, does any of this actually add up? That's why common sense becomes a threat. Because it interferes with the official script. And governments love scripts, the kind where every citizen is an extra. And the people in power are always the heroes, even when they're the ones burning down the building. Look at the modern world. If you use common sense, if you rely on your own judgment, if you question the official version of events, suddenly you're suspicious. You ask why something is happening. Suspicious. You point out that a policy contradicts itself. Suspicious. You notice that the people making the rules aren't following the rules. Now you're extremely suspicious. It's almost comical. Just noticing the obvious gets you treated like you're planning a revolution. Meanwhile, the people actually causing chaos, through incompetence, greed, or sheer stupidity, get away with everything because they hide behind the magic phrase, a national security. Common sense tells you the truth long before the authorities do. You don't need intelligence briefings, classified documents, or official reports to understand that something isn't working. Humans evolved with the ability to recognize nonsense. It's built into us like the ability to walk. But somehow, society has turned nonsense into a national resource. The more nonsense you accept, the more good of a citizen you are. The more nonsense you question, the more dangerous you become. You can't have a functioning democracy if people start applying common sense to the decisions of their leaders. If they did, half of those leaders wouldn't last a week in the teeth. So what do the people in power do? They flip the script. They make common sense seem irresponsible. They make questioning seem unpatriotic. They make clarity look like troublemaking. They don't have to ban common sense officially. They just stigmatize it, mock it, punish it, drown it in noise, bury it in bureaucracy, and smother it with slogans. Before long, people stop using it out of fear of sticking out. And once people stop using their own judgment, they rely entirely on the people in charge, which is exactly how the people in charge like it. The truth is, common sense threatens power because it makes power answerable. It demands explanations. It demands consistency. It demands honesty. And those are the three things any government avoids like a teenager avoids chores. Common sense is the flashlight in a dark room full of people who don't want you to see what they're doing. Of course they're going to call it a threat. Of course they're going to act like it's dangerous. For them, it is that systems today are built in a way that slowly replaces a person's natural thinking with a series of instructions, warnings, and pre-approved opinions. It starts small, almost innocent. A sign here, a guideline there, a rule nobody asked for but everybody has to follow. Before long, people stop using their own judgment because the system has already done the thinking for them. And when people stop thinking for themselves, the system becomes the only brain in the room. That's exactly how the people running things want it. When you rely on your own logic, your own instincts, your own ability to observe the world, you become unpredictable. You might disagree. You might resist. You might ask the one thing they can't stand. Why? But if the system can convince you that every situation requires a rule and every thought needs approval, then you're much easier to manage. Look at how society trains people. Every day we're greeted by warnings that treat us like confused toddlers lost in a shopping mall. Do not stand on the top step. Coffee may be hot. Or do not eat this battery. Somewhere in an office, a committee actually sat down and approved these signs because they assume people can't figure out basic reality on their own. And once you flood the world with instructions, people stop trusting their own common sense. They wait to be told what to do, how to act, what to think. The system becomes the babysitter, the parent, the teacher, the GPS of life. You don't think, you follow. Governments love this setup because a population that follows rules without questioning them is the easiest population to control. They create layers of complexity, forms, procedures, protocols, until thinking for yourself becomes a burden. Instead of using your own reasoning, you rely on regulation. Instead of analyzing a situation, you check what the rulebook says. People become so dependent on official guidelines that they forget the simple truths they used to know instinctively. Bureaucracy replaces intuition. Policies replace judgment. Compliance replaces intelligence. And it doesn't stop with warnings and rules. It seeps into speech, behavior, choices, and beliefs. Systems create official narratives that tell you what's appropriate to think and what's inappropriate to question. They don't need to censor you directly. They just surround you with noise until you start doubting your own ability to interpret reality. Everything becomes regulated, monitored, approved, or restricted. And the natural flow of human understanding gets buried under layers of artificial control. People start believing that thinking is dangerous, questioning is rebellious, and independent judgment is some kind of social crime. This is how you gradually turn a society of thinking adults into a society of obedient followers. The system doesn't want you analyzing a situation. It wants you checking the rule first. It doesn't want you asking if something makes sense. It wants you asking if it's allowed. The more complicated the system becomes, the more people surrender their own mental autonomy to avoid the frustration of navigating it. Eventually, people forget they were ever capable of figuring things out for themselves. And once that happens, the system doesn't have to suppress common sense anymore. People stop using it voluntarily. Clarity is dangerous because the moment you start seeing things clearly, you stop falling for the tricks. You stop buying the excuses, the slogans, the staged outrage, the patriotic wallpaper they use to cover up the cracks in the system. Clarity exposes corruption in a way that no investigation, no committee, no report ever could. You don't need a team of experts with charts and microphones. All you need is a quiet moment and a functioning brain. If something looks crooked, if something feels wrong, if something consistently benefits the same small group of people while everyone else keeps struggling, clarity tells you exactly what's happening long before anyone in power admits it. And because clarity is such a threat to the people running the show, they do everything they can to keep the public foggy, confused, distracted, and overwhelmed. When you think clearly, you realize how obvious most of the corruption actually is. It's not hidden behind layers of mystery. It's right out in the open in plain sight, like a billboard announcing the stupidity of the system. You notice patterns. You notice repeated failures that always seem to end with more money missing, more rights gone, and more explanations that don't explain anything. You begin to understand that the people who claim to be fixing the problems are the same people who created them. Once that picture becomes clear, you stop treating these authorities like experts and start viewing them like what they are: overpaid amateurs pretending to be professionals. The system depends on citizens accepting contradictions without question. They tell you the economy is booming while your wallet is empty. They tell you you're safer than ever while the world looks like it's one bad Tuesday away from collapse. They tell you everything is under control while nothing works properly. Not the roads, not the schools, not the hospitals, not the people making the decisions. Clarity doesn't buy any of this. Clarity says if everything is going great, why does everything feel terrible? And because that type of question cuts right to the heart of the nonsense, the system treats clarity like a weapon. People in power prefer a public that stays confused. Confusion is a shield. If people don't understand the rules, they can't challenge them. If people don't understand how money moves, they can't follow it. If people don't understand what's being done in their name, they can't object. But clarity shines a light on all those little dark corners where the deals are made, where the speeches are written, where the lies are prepared. Clarity ruins the magic trick because it makes you watch the magician's hands instead of the hat. Every time you see the truth plainly, corruption gets harder to hide. You start connecting dots that the system works very hard to keep separate. You start noticing that the people who talk the most about honesty are often the ones lying the loudest. You start realizing that the people insisting they care about you are really just worried about themselves. Clarity strips away the illusions that protect power. And that is why power always tries to cloud your vision. Because the moment you see things clearly, the corruption becomes impossible to unsee. In the end, it all comes down to one simple truth. The world isn't suffering from a lack of intelligence, technology, resources, or solutions. It's suffering from a shortage of people willing to think for themselves. Common sense hasn't disappeared. It's been buried under rules, drowned in noise, and treated like contraband. The system doesn't want clear thinkers. It wants obedient passengers on a ship that's already leaking. But the real power has never been in their slogans or their security briefings. It's in the individual who decides to actually pay attention. The moment you start seeing through the nonsense, the whole game changes. You stop being a spectator and become a threat. And maybe that's exactly what the world needs right now. A few more threats armed with nothing but logic, clarity, and the courage to use them.